Today is Qi, and although this is a big day in Chinese history, I found out last year, after filming a video based on Unit 731 for this anniversary, that actually, outside of China, this day means nothing to a lot of people. In fact, after living in China for a few years, I've realised just how little we in the West actually know about China's history. However, don't be confused into thinking we know nothing at all. I first learned about the region of Manchuria in my secondary school history classes in England, as we actually studied the Manchurian Crisis, 918事变. In year 10 and 11 in English schools, when kids are 14 and 15, they start preparing for national exams called GCSEs, which are similar to the Chinese 中考. At this age, students can choose to drop a few classes that they don't enjoy, but important classes such as English language and literature, mathematics and science are all compulsory. I personally dropped geography, art and drama. It's at this time that the Manchurian Crisis is often taught in history GCSE classes, and whilst history GCSE isn't compulsory, it was actually the most picked optional GCSE subject last year, so there's plenty of students in the UK learning it. However, the UK has multiple different exam boards that schools can choose from, and only one of the three major exam boards includes the Manchurian Crisis on its history syllabus, so not every GCSE history student will learn it. The Manchurian Crisis is chosen because it was an important part of world geopolitical history, and so questions focus on the League of Nations, which was almost like an early predecessor to the UN. Students learn that Japan was a member of this League of Nations, and that in 1931, Japan actually invaded Manchuria after they claimed that the Chinese sabotaged their railway. However, our history books tell us that this was most likely an excuse, as the Chinese government had instructed its forces not to fight Japan at all. It's most likely that Japanese forces sabotaged their own railway as an excuse to invade Manchuria. Since Japan was a member, China actually called upon the League of Nations to help, but their reaction was slow and weak. They sent Lord Lytton to investigate, and his investigation did eventually claim that Japan had acted unlawfully and must immediately withdraw from Manchuria. However, Japan responded by simply withdrawing from the League of Nations, and other members were either powerless or mostly unwilling to help China, as they perceived the threat as being too far away to be important. I could go into more details, but to summarise, we are taught in school that China was an unfortunate victim of Japanese aggression, and that the weak response of the League of Nations could have even given other fascist regimes, such as Germany and Italy, more confidence for future invasions. That's where our history textbooks stop, and the event is listed as 1931 to 33, as that was when Japan left the League of Nations. So what do you think? Did the UK textbooks teach the Manchurian Crisis accurately? Now that I've learned more about the Sino-Japanese War and the suffering that took place until 1945, I do find it a bit surprising that we only studied the events up until 1933, and it's a bit of a shame that we don't learn more about this war. However, I do understand that the central focus of this curriculum was actually not the Japanese invasion of China, but the League of Nations' reaction to the Manchurian Crisis, and how this reaction shaped global geopolitics at the time, and so this is what students must answer questions about. Still, looking back to when I was sitting in my history class aged 14, learning about the Manchurian Crisis, I could never have imagined that one day I'd not only end up visiting the region, but actually marrying a Manchurian local and living there myself. It really is a crazy world. China made huge efforts and sacrifices to fight fascism, but unfortunately outside of China, we still don't recognise these efforts enough. China's contributions to World War II are therefore often overlooked by those in the West, so hopefully in future I can make more videos informing more people all around the world of these efforts.